Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today is super exciting. Not only are we going to get into material science research and petroleum and plastic production, but we've been doing some exploring. This is how much of the map that we've uncovered. And remember when I said, well, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of vents and geysers on here? Well, that was when we had only explored about this much. Well, after we've explored this, I count 29 vents and geysers. And you can guarantee there's probably one or two in here. There might be something else here, but 29 vents and geysers. And we're eventually going to tame every single one of them. Some of the highlights? Yeah, we have a hydrogen vent. That's a rare one. 2 gold volcanoes? Check. Liquid sulfur? 2 natural gas geysers. An iron volcano. Are you ready for this? 8 volcanoes. 8 and 9 total sources of water, to include my personal favorite, a water geyser. And the water geyser happens to be located next to 2 oil reservoirs, which means we're going to have a convenient source of water for our oil pumps. And if this wasn't already my favorite map I think I've ever played, look at the size of this uranium biome. It just keeps going and going, still going. And I think it ends down here. We're going to have more uranium ore than we know what to do with, which definitely means we're going to have a nuclear reactor or 2 or 3, because why not? Before we can go any further and really exploiting this map and everything it has to offer, it's time for us to get into material science research. We've finished just about all of our tier 1 and tier 2 research, but we definitely need researches such as the steam turbine. And in order to get that, we've got to get some applied science. Out of this entire map, there's only really 2 forms of radiation that we could actually start with. We can't actually start with the uranium and uranium ore because the research reactor is way over here. And by itself, you can see there's just very little radiation around here. So that leaves us with 2 options. Weiswarts, which this is the only one I have found on the entire map. There might be another one in here, but either way, remember, you can't reproduce Weiswarts. So what you have is all you're ever going to have. The other option is this Shinebug. And we have to be very careful with this Shinebug because it is quite literally the only Shinebug on the entire map. Despite the fact that Shinebugs can live in minus 20 degree environment, most of Rime was too cold for Shinebugs. And so they just died off. Now, we're not going to do any sort of Shinebug reactor, quite frankly, because we're taking this game into the deep game. And you really want to kind of limit the amount of infinite critter supplies you have. And the infinite critter supply that I really want to work on is the infinite fish to feed the tree. So we're going to start with this little guy and probably have 4 or 5 breeder Shinebugs and use the rest for our radiation requirements. And here's how we're going to do it. This breeder tank will probably hold 3 to 4 Shinebugs. Whenever they lay an egg, this auto sweeper is going to grab it and send it over here. And all the excess eggs are going to be dropped here. Now, occasionally, the dupes will come by, grab an egg, and bring it to the incubator. But for the most part, all the eggs are just going to hatch, turn into Shinebugs, and create some radiation. Our rad bolt generator is going to collect them and push them right into the material study terminal. Don't worry about the pneumatic door. Rad bolts can go through pneumatic doors, and we have a signal switch on it. That way we can make sure we're not darting any dupes in the eye. I'll probably upgrade this later to a timer. Maybe twice a cycle, we will send some rad bolts over to the study terminal. But to start with, I like to keep it on a switch. That way I can kind of make sure the process is working okay and to see how many rad bolts we're generating. Now comes the pain in the butt thing, and that's grabbing the shine nymph. Now there's 2 ways we could do this. One is using about 500 airborne critter baits and try to actually bait the Shinebug to come all the way around here, through the door, through some more doors, into our stable. Now, if we had more Shinebugs, we could just collect an egg and put it in the incubator, and that would be that. But we don't. And unfortunately, I missed the last time that it actually produced. In fact, this shine nymph is only 1 cycle old. So I literally missed it by about a cycle and a half of being able to dig in there and going to grab that Shinebug. But there's one other trick that we can do. If we put in a critter drop off and say, hey, wrangle all the excess and set it to 0, it'll grab that Shinebug anyways. We'll put in a door to make sure it's a room, and that way none of the other critters on the map are going to interfere with it, and we will just dig right in. Speaking of critters, I've been coring out the top of the map. Another great thing about this map is it has shovel voles. And when a shovel vole dies, it leaves 16,000 calories. Now, eventually, we're going to do some shovel vole farming and probably sustain off of shovel voles, but I don't want to do that for a while. I want to try different sources of food, but we'll keep this in mind for endgame. And the occasional shovel vole that dies and leaves us with 16,000 calories, hey, even better. All right, so we dug it out, but they didn't build the pneumatic door. This is something they need to actually hurry at. All right, that's much better. Speaking of which, look at all the times eggs have been laid in here. There's a ton of eggshell. And we're having a great time turning all those eggshells into lime. That was until we got down to the oil biome and found a bunch of fossil. And now we're smashing all that fossil up for its lime. Right now we're up to, I don't know, 815 kilos of lime. Not to mention all the beautiful poke shell molts these poke shells are dropping. I mean, one day we're going to be ranching poke shells. We're going to have so much steel, it's going to be coming out of our ears. All thanks to the iron volcano. How does steel come out of your ears? And here we are. This is basically how the trick works. Now, I'm not normally an exploity type of guy. I try to do things the way the developers sort of intended. For the life of me, I don't understand why you can't just normally walk up to a Shinebug and catch it in a jar or something. So this one, I give a pass. All we do, put it on 0 critters, auto-wrangle the surplus, and somebody's going to come by. At first, nothing was happening. I was like, why isn't my trick working? And apparently it's because the Shinebug was still a baby. But now that the baby's turned into an adult, old Hawkeye over here, he's coming to truss it up just like we planned. And there's our new Shinebug in its happy little home. Speaking of critters, it's time to automate this and really start on our barbecue production instead of omelets. We're going to put down all of our auto sweepers. And we've been building a lot of stuff out of lead because, well, we have almost 71 tons of lead. And that's just from the little bit of coring out of the oil biome that we have done. Put in our beautiful conveyor loaders, and then tie them all up with rail. Now, we're already in the process of building our meat factory. All we really have to do is tie in the rail system. And for this, we're actually using iron ore. Because we found the iron volcano, there's no reason for us to skimp on copper ore or anything like that. We can use all the iron ore that we find. And so far on this map, we have found a ton thanks to these little boulders. They're scattered all over the place, in addition to the natural biomes that have iron ore anyways. And the first honorary members of our meat factory are being incubated. This auto sweeper has no problem picking up the meat when it falls, transferring it right over to the electric grill. Now, we still don't have infinite food storage, quite frankly, because, well, we don't have plastic. And we need plastic to make steam turbines. And we need steam turbines to be able to cool thermo aqua tuners. And we need a thermo aqua tuner in order to make our freezer. It's all part of the circle of life. And the path to get there actually starts right here with this water geyser. We're going to get this water geyser analyzed, figure out how much water we have to play with, and we're going to see if it's enough to feed both of these oil reservoirs. I absolutely love the Rime oil biome. Not only does it have diamond and fossil and lead, it also has frozen crude oil. And what's incredible is this is actually 3,200 kilos of crude oil. A normal tile of crude oil is normally between 800 and 900. So 3,200 kilos of crude oil sitting in one tile? That's a lot of oil. So I did the math on this water geyser, and the news is decent. It comes out to be 2.79 kilos of 95-degree water indefinitely. Now 2.79, I wish it was just a smidge higher, because at 3 kilos per second indefinitely, we could actually run 3 oil reservoirs. 1, 2, then we have a third up here. And 3 oil reservoirs is that magic number because that's sort of the number that you're shooting for on a petroleum boiler. Yes, we're finally going to get to do a petroleum boiler. For now, though, we're going to do it the old-fashioned way. And that involves using one of these guys. We put an oil well on top of the reservoir. Now, the oil well requires 1 kilo of water per second. And what it'll give you in return is 3.3 kilos of crude oil. Well, that and a lot of natural gas. So what we do is we use one of these systems here. We'll collect all the natural gas here, and we'll siphon out all the oil from here, as long as the oil doesn't drop below this point here. The reason why we don't touch the oil until it comes below here is because we want to maintain that liquid lock that the oil is providing for us. That way, none of this natural gas gets out. Boy, are we going to be swimming in natural gas. And here's the finished product. We have the oil well, which, as we said before, emits just over 3 kilos of crude oil per second. We have a liquid pump here, controlled by a hydro sensor. And this way, it won't start pumping until the oil is above this level. And once it is above this level, well, then we can pump some of it. We want to leave it at this level so we keep all the natural gas contained up here. Now, it's going to be close. Some of the natural gas might escape before the oil actually gets up to that level, but not a big deal. Forgot I need to add an insulated tile right there. This gas pump is here just in case we ever decide that we want to grab that natural gas. Now, eventually, we will need to siphon it out. Right now, it's only 800 grams, but eventually the gas pressure would be too much for the insulated tile. Now, the water supplying the oil well is coming from this water geyser. I'm using the airflow tiles just to get the last little bit of gas pressure out of here, and that way this whole thing just becomes one brick of water that we can tap into whenever we need to. Now, eventually we're going to expand this, and that way there's plenty of water, so even when this water geyser goes dormant. But right now I just wanted to get it up and running. As for the oil itself, it's going to come over here to a main run. And we ran a lot of insulated piping all the way to the top of our base. Literally, it was about 70 tons worth. And that's where it's going to come into this system. We're going to store some of it and send the rest on to the oil refinery. The oil refinery is going to take the crude oil and turn it into petroleum. And then we're going to send the petroleum to these tanks, where we're going to store some and send some. Some of it's going to be sent off here to petroleum generators. And we have the petroleum generators set on 90 and 70. Discount this battery. We've never lost power enough to where this battery can actually catch back up. Eventually it will, once we have the petroleum generators online. Now, the oil refinery is a nasty little beast. It also produces natural gas. And that's why we have this gas element sensor connected to a gas pump. Looks like we need a little bit of power to it as well. And what this gas pump does is just send all the nasty stuff out to our garbage vent, all the way at the top of the planetoid. Now, the petroleum generators themselves produce some of the highest power output you can actually get in the game, at 2,000 watts. That's incredible. But they also produce a ton of polluted water and carbon dioxide. Lucky for us, we already know how to deal with those. We're just going to extend our liquid pumps to cover the area of the petroleum generators, and then tie them in with the rest of our polluted water, which is kind of getting to be a trend. If you'll notice, we've been chock full on this polluted water tank for quite some time, and that's even with this cool slush geyser being dormant. Combine that with the other 9 sources of just geyser and vent water that we have, we need to start thinking about water storage. And this is what our little expanded tank is going to be. This should be plenty in order to provide both oil wells with enough water to keep going in between its dormancy cycle. Speaking of which, we're almost there with the oil, a little bit further, and we'll be able to start pumping some of that oil out. We've already got our nice liquid lock here. You can tell it's just oil and natural gas. Such a beautiful system. Little update on our Shinebug farm. Doing well. We've got 3 shine nymphs over here. Our incubator, it'll produce 5 shine bugs in 25 cycles, which is actually a little bit more than what we need because we only need 4 shine bugs in 25 cycles. So it works. And our radiation is working out just fine. We've already got 484 rad bolts over here in our rad bolt generator. You can see that our little bugs that can are producing between 60 and 70 rads per cycle. And that's just with the 6 critters that are in here. Over time, there'll be more and more critters. It'll probably cap out around 30 or 40 is what I'm guessing, based on how many breeders we have. This is not an infinite Shinebug reactor, and you can tell because all the Shinebugs are confined, which reduces their reproduction to 0, which is fine for what we need. All we need it for is to occasionally send some rad bolts over, and there we have it. Only 48 rad bolts? No. We forgot to adjust this. Let's say 102 rad bolts. Should be enough to put 100 in the material study terminal and the 2 tile distance for the rad bolts to travel. So at the end, 100 rad bolts should end up in this study terminal. We've got our first bit of crude oil in our second tank. Now you might be wondering why there's 2 tanks for our overflow. Well, that's because the way we have it set up, we actually want to save an entire tank worth of crude oil. We're doing the same thing on the petroleum. In other words, it's not actually going to start pushing oil up here to the oil refinery until this tank here fills up. Once it does, it'll then start sending it over to the oil refinery. The same thing with the petroleum. The petroleum will come out of here, it'll come into this tank, and then go into this tank. It'll back up into this tank until it's 5 kilo capacity before it actually sends any petroleum over to the petroleum generators. Not that it matters much, because we have power for days. We have this natural gas geyser, then we have this natural gas geyser, and then we have all this natural gas. And we haven't even started building the second oil well. Now, the purpose behind this whole system, if you remember, wasn't actually to use petroleum for power, but since we're going to have it, we might as well. Our primary objective was actually creating plastic. Now, this is a temporary setup. Eventually, we're going to have a petroleum boiler strapped to one of our volcanoes, and then we don't need to deal with the oil refinery. We're also going to have our industrial brick, and this polymer press is actually going to be over there because they are a little sloppy. Our polymer press that creates our plastic actually produces steam, which is kind of a bummer because it's going to put a bunch of steam into this room, but as soon as it gets to the room, it's going to flash to water, and then we have to deal with the actual water. And considering you don't know where that steam's going to travel to before it flashes, well, therein lies the problem. Now, we can help this process out a little bit by putting some insulated tiles, say here. And this way, we can try to capture the steam as it's coming out, but I don't have a lot of faith in this system. The idea being that if we can capture the steam up here because the steam rises, and then it flashes to water, the water would then fall into one area that we could collect it from. We'll see. So we finally hit 4 shine nymphs, and it looks like this is too many nymphs for this little area. So we're actually going to reduce it down to only asking for 3 critters at a time. Now just to pick one that we're going to kill. Sorry, little fella. We finally hit that perfect equilibrium level, and we're actually starting to pump crude oil all the way up to the top of our base. And this is exactly what we wanted. All the natural gas sitting on here, and all the crude oil sitting below it. Now, we have started planning for when we need to siphon out this natural gas. And once again, it was another 80 tons worth of insulated gas pipe. This time, we're going up the left side of our base. The gas pipe's going to follow all the way up and join up with the other 2 vents. And all that beautiful crude oil is starting to get stockpiled in this liquid reservoir. Once we have it stockpiled, it'll then be sent to the oil refinery. And why are we stockpiling crude oil? I really couldn't tell you. I just get nervous about not having any laying around. So I want at least 1 tank full, and then I'll feel much better. And here's our completed system. We've already created over a ton of plastic. I had made a mistake. I didn't build the polymer press originally out of steel. I built it out of iron ore, and so it quickly melted and overheated. This is starting to get a little warm. So I think what we'll do is put it on a timer, so it has a little bit of time to, cool down. It can go all the way up to 275 degrees though, and right now it's only at about 90 degrees. In fact, why don't I set that up now? Easy enough. We have a switch here that decides when we want to produce plastic. So if I don't want to produce any plastic, I can just turn it off. This is an AND gate, so it requires both the timer to be active and the switch. The switch is the way that when we're done producing plastic, we can just turn the whole system off. But otherwise, the polymer press is going to actually run for 300 seconds and then take a 300-second break. I had just completed one of these, and look, the temperature went from 90 degrees all the way down to mid-60s just in that small break time frame. Now, eventually the ambient temperature in this room will increase because we're going to be creating so much plastic, but by then, I don't think we're going to care too much. All this stuff will be moved to an industrial brick. We're also capturing all the steam. That system seems to work out decent. The steam gets captured up here, pretty much instantly turns to water, and drops right down here. We have a completed plastic production. We have our nice little water tank. We have a beautiful oil well set up. I even added this little dispenser in case we needed to drop off any crude oil shards. We also fully automated our hatches and are now producing barbecue at a pretty good clip. So all in all, I think we accomplished a lot in this episode. Now that we have access to steam turbines, next episode, the sky's the limit. Let me know in the comments below what you'd like to see first. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know I did, and I'll talk to you soon.